Good morning. All right. I'm going to try to do this by looking for Sally this morning so that I can invite her on. I'm excited. Welcome. Welcome to everyone this morning on a Monday, getting closer to Christmas each and every day. Oh, there. This went flawlessly. I am like, oh my goodness, this is so
It,
good.
it never goes flawlessly for me. I'm so impressed. I think we're sisters in another life.
Maybe. I mean, come on, we have short hair, so I love
Short
that.
hair, 10,000 steps.
Oh, good. Okay, I didn't know that you were a 10,000 step friend.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I thought we would be great
Oh
neighbors.
my
But
gosh.
you would inspire me to really work hard and do the things I need to
Oh,
do, and I would just be your
oh my
friend.
gosh. Well, then you would be inspiring me in other areas, right? We all have our giftings and we all have something to bring to the table. So I love that. Okay,
Great.
so let me introduce you because I think there might be some people in my audience that may not know who you are and why this is kind of a big deal. And I may start crying during this interview
Oh,
because
bless your
it is a
heart.
big deal to have a chat with you. But so if you are unfamiliar with Sally, she is literally such a mentor for women. She has written over 30 books. She is an amazing speaker. People consider her a mentor, and I would say you should wear that title proudly. And she really has dedicated her life to being that type of mentor that so many women just did not have, either growing up or even in the early stages of motherhood or even later on. So I just think that for me personally, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I didn't become a believer and even understand what my role in the home was biblically until much later in my journey of motherhood. And so having women that can pour into other women is so key. So, and you are that. So,
Oh,
welcome.
you are so kind. Thank you so much. Well, I feel like the Lord allowed me to know some things little by little. I kept wanting to have more kids so I could do it right.
Oh my gosh,
But
right?
but I didn't have anybody who believed what I believed, or any mentors, or any people in my life. And I thought, if I make it through, I want this to be one of my messages, one of my focuses, because I think it's so profoundly important what we do. So
It,
thank you for saying
it
that.
is. It is so profound. And, I have some questions that my audience had submitted. So, but so many people were just thrilled. I will tell you, I had so many little comment,
Oh,
messages of just like, oh my gosh, you're going to talk with Sally. This is
how fun.
amazing. And just so many joyous messages. But that this kind of leads me to the first question, which I think would be kind of fun to talk about. Lisa had asked, how can I make up for all the years I didn't parent well now that my children are grown? And I kind of related to that because I think so. Part of my story is I was married. I was a single mom for 8 years, and that's when I came to know Christ. And so, I dramatically changed a lot of things during that year. But there are things like I regret a lot of things,
Sure.
and I think it doesn't
We
even
all do.
matter, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We are all going to have regrets. But I guess if that was a question that came to you today, what would you say to Lisa?
You know, um, I am not a perfect person, never will be, never, you will never be,
Right.
none of us will be. And there are a couple of things I have found that have worked in my life when I either offend or make a mistake. Sometimes when they offend me, I still do this. One is a foundation of unconditional love over and over and over again. Sending them cards, sending them messages, telling them you love them. Number two is asking them for forgiveness. I remember one of my children had offended me. It was just I'm so used to kids now going through stages because my kids are very old, not very old, but 40 on down. And so I thought, maybe I've taken this child out of context because there were some little issues that were boiling between us. And so I took her out to breakfast and I said, sweetie, if I've done anything to offend you, will you forgive me? Because I love you so much. I just want to be close to you. And I know that I am not a perfect mama. Well, it just opened so many doors that I wasn't expecting. And eventually she said, will you forgive me for some of the ways I've treated you? And I think that one of the things that has struck me in the past few years is that Jesus said, I am humble and meek, learn from me. And I thought, oh, it's coming to our children as a servant leader like he was. He was the one who washed 120 dirty men toes. And coming to them with love, coming to them with humility, and then trying to see their context. We don't think exactly the same way as any of our children do. They have personalities, they have issues, but I think communication, commitment, and unconditional love is just so important when our children are adults as well as when they're little ones.
That is so true, right? I mean, humbling ourselves in that place of allowing to have open dialogue and owning, right, that
Right.
we haven't been perfect and being able to share that. I have had different conversations like that with my older kids, and I will say it is very it's very eye-opening, but it just takes down kind of that wall of unknown too, right? You just kind of think, did that really bother them or whatever? And
Right.
it breaks it down.
I
So,
think one last thing I was thinking is when you do this, don't come with any blame for them. Do it neutrally. You can talk about, or maybe the Lord will bring it up some other time what they've done. But as a humble, loving, I'm so thankful you're my child and you're a blessing to me.
I love that.
Then you can set the stage for developing closer relationships later.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so good. Yeah. Um, w- I wanted to just, I loved your book. Thank you. This, you guys,
Oh,
this book is, I think it's your latest, right? I mean, it
right,
just came out like a month and a half, 2 months ago.
right.
But this quote in here, I think for me was so good. And it's right near the beginning, which I love. And I think we all know we get a little Sally in our lives because of the quotes. They're all over the internet and on your Instagram, and I love it. It's just like a little nudge and it just like a little reminder for us. But this one was so good because it touched me coming from a background that maybe didn't set me up in a way to have be a successful mother necessarily,
Right,
but this was good. Every woman has potential to embrace her own story, to become queen over her own domain, to work hard to leave a legacy of wisdom, love, gratitude, and grace. That literally it makes me want to cry because I'm at this season in my journey where almost all my kids are out of the home. We adopted later in life, so we still have one at home, but I'm also in that season of having a couple grandbabies. And I think you get, maybe it was different for you, but I feel like this is it. This is my place. Like this
right.
is my season to step into a completely different type of motherhood that is leaving a legacy, right?
Right.
That's where my heart is right now.
Mhm.
And so maybe you can expand on that a little bit just to like because I mean you are, kind of in another season of having, even older children.
Mhm.
What does that what beats your heart like really strong when women want to talk about leaving a legacy? What does that
Well,
mean?
of course, my ultimate goal, because my life was so transformed many, many years ago when I understood that I was unconditionally loved. I kind of grew up feeling like I could never be good enough.
Um,
I could never do enough. I could never. And so just the idea that I could be unconditionally loved really was the beginning of me kind of turning in a new direction. But I realized that these little human beings that are entrusted into our hands are those who will become adults with messages, with life, with love, with integrity or not in the next generation. And a great soul, a virtuous soul, doesn't just happen by accident any more than having seeds in your cupboard in the kitchen are going to naturally grow into a plant. And so I wish that everyone knew one of the things that I've realized in my life is that my story becomes my platform.
yeah.
let's say that you have a difficult life or scars in the past, or you haven't been perfect, your family wasn't perfect, maybe you have voices in your head that
Right.
condemn you. And I realized that my story became my platform, in that maybe there were other people who didn't feel good enough. Maybe
Hmm.
there were other people who didn't feel like if they, no matter what they did, wasn't pleasing to those in their background. And so I've kind of built on that platform. It's as though the Lord said, every person has unique DNA, unique fingerprints, unique backstory. And this is the place, not some other place. It's not you wait until life gets better.
Right.
This is the place where you can live a life of faith and move in the direction of goodness and love and redeeming and another area for me is I when I'm not going to tell you those stories too long, but the first time I started blogging, the first title was not significant because my husband said, "Don't do that; it'll attract the wrong kind of people." Um, but I named it "I Take Joy," because I was at a point in my life. I was on a mission trip actually, and sitting in Poland, and I had just met with all these people in these different countries, and they were all depressed. And this spouse would talk to me about their spouse, and then this spouse would talk to me about them. And I thought, gosh, is it possible to be joyful in
Mhm.
this very chaotic, difficult world? And so I kind of made another area, and I also have it in the book, about cultivating
Joy.
joy, cultivating delight wherever you are, because I think that with the world so chaotic right now, and with so many disappointments with people, one of the things I'm trying to do with my children and with my audience is to give them hope, to say, notice the beauty, notice the joy, celebrate the light, because I think that we all need a shot in the arm of
Mm.
hope, but we can become that hope in the way that we live for other people.
Yes.
Sending notes to people who have a need, loving people unconditionally who are hurting, making a meal, writing an article, a lot of the things that you do. I just love looking at your posts. But, it's important how you perceive yourself. And I thought, I want to be a joy giver, a light giver, and end my days leaving a legacy of love, of hope, of unconditional love, and of joy, to create joy no matter what my
Right.
circumstances. So that it's
Right.
helped me kind of live differently.
Yeah. Well, I think it does, right? Because cultivating joy or finding joy, joy is a choice. It is not dependent on your circumstances. And I think that's where society has kind
Mhm.
of shifted things, right? And so as a believer, we are to have joy. It doesn't matter what's happening. And so, I mean, that's not always easy. We know,
Mm-mm.
right? We always are having to check our mind, because our mind likes to, our mind and our heart likes to take us on these little tangents, but it is definitely a choice.
Mhm.
So yeah. Okay, so another question. If the Lord has blessed you with just one child, how could leaving a legacy be a big impact? This is good, because I
Uh,
think we can tend to think that we're only leaving a legacy if we have, multiple children, and we have this
right.
this kind of photo of all of these people sitting around, the table at a holiday, and that's not the case, right?
No, and not the case for most people. And I know many amazing, wonderful single women who would love also to be able to design their own story. Um, I think that for me, legacy is about inspiring, whether it's my children, my friends, my husband, my coworkers, whatever. I want them to have the sense of God's truth, God's love, His ways. And so the messages that we live, I think that people need to see integrity in our lives. They need to see that what we say is what we also do. And so if you have one child, or if you have no children, but you have friends,
Yeah.
and you have neighbors, um, whatever is in your story, those people, it's not some magical group of people outside that you influence. It is the people who are in your life are people who you have a stewardship over.
Yeah.
I've always kind of said, God, what would you dream through me if I could be your hands, your words, your goodness today? Show me how this day can be really worthy of you because you've been so kind to me.
I love that. That is so good. I think, I think too, when you said even, women that are single and never had children, maybe they never married, um, and how their life is still so worthy, right? And so I think of one person in my life in particular that was at the church where I came to know Christ, and she never married, she never had any children, but I can tell you the legacy that she has left, it will impact more people than had she had a family,
Mhm.
right? I mean, because that was what the Lord had planned for her.
Mhm.
So that is just such truth right there. I love that. Okay, another one from my friend Olivia. She is an amazing. She's on Instagram, the Not So Angry Mom, and she does so many little video clips of how she sets expectations for her children in order to, yeah, be a little bit more of a peaceful parent, which I love. But she said she would love to know, did parenting ever feel like it didn't come naturally, like it was hard?
Oh, of
And I was like, this
course.
is going to be a good one.
The funny thing is I often think that the Lord went to 50 other people and said, "Will you do this ministry?" And they went, "No." "Will you do it?" "No." And then when he got to me, he went, "Well, she's not very qualified, but she's willing."
That's right.
Because I had never changed a diaper. I perceived myself as a professional woman, not as a mother. I didn't know how much work there would be. I didn't know that all four of my children would have very different personalities and that two of them would be clinically OCD. Um, I mean, I feel like we don't, this is the thing. I think that if you have a vision for what matters, and if you feel like you have, in a sense, a calling or a legacy to leave, then it helps you keep going through the hard times. But I look back now, I wish that I had known this. I wish I had known that the world was chaotic and that meant that people were
Right.
chaotic. That would have saved me from a lot of surprise.
Right.
But as I look back, I was surprised at many of the very difficult times in parenting. But now I live through them. And my children, the other day, one of my sons was saying to me, you probably think that the birthday cakes and the traditions and all the celebrations were the thing that impacted us the most. But he said, as I look at my world, and he's in a very secular world, he said, I feel like watching you walk through difficulties and watching you walk through temptations and walking through erratic people, um, those are the things that have had the most impact on me because with me walking through challenges now, I have a model of what you did. And it mattered that when you didn't think anybody was watching and you didn't even know if it mattered, you taking one more step in hard times is what impacted us. So
Wow.
even your difficulties can become a part of the legacy of your story that you live.
Yeah, those are like those teaching moments, you just never know, like you said, who is watching or that it will actually come back full circle and have impact later. But I think it's easy to think, like for Olivia to be like, oh yeah, parenting is just easier for some people than other people. And
At least not
I
for me.
no, I would say no. And because it would be different if we had this manual because everybody operated the same way. And that's just not the case, right? Like you said, you have had four very different personalities. I have four very different personality kids, right? And
Mhm.
just different, unique things. And so, but I do, and I'm sure you would probably agree on some level, like I know just like in my marriage that these were the people that I was supposed to have in my life.
Right.
Not just because I'm pouring out and giving to them,
Mhm.
but they're molding me and who the Lord wants me to become, right?
That is so
I
true.
mean, it's like, I think sometimes people, since our youngest was adopted, people say, "Oh gosh, what a blessing you have been to him. Like, this is so great, whatever." And then I have to turn it around and say, "Oh my gosh, you have no idea, because what the work that the Lord has done in me, and that what he does, this little guy, he's not
Mm,
little anymore, he's 15, but that he did for our family, that's the huge blessing."
that,
So
that's so
it is
true.
all perspective sometimes,
I
right?
so agree. And I feel like we forget that as a good parent, God is training us and he's
Mhm.
shaping our heart and our faith and our personality. And which means that sometimes he has to say no, sometimes he has to train and all. And I really feel like I'm so much more understand his fathering of me because of me having to mother all of my children. And
Right.
I think he considers me as a toddler. Well, she's not, she's just a toddler. She's gonna be better someday.
Yeah.
But I feel like I realize that he's mindful that we're but dust. He's kind of like, well, Sally's just dust, but I love her anyway, and I will work in her life.
Right.
And I think it's an illusion that parenting is easy for some people. Maybe it is,
Right.
but they haven't had my children. you know. And yet I feel like I'm much more the person that I would have wanted to have been, but I could never have grown in depth unless I had had a lot of issues with my children and had to
Right.
walk through it, overcome it, learn to be faithful in the midst of it.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that some people might be more inclined, but I wasn't.
Yeah. And I think those experiences, right? I mean, just like you said, we all have our own story, and how that impacts other people. I mean, how your life, and now look at the audience and the people that you are influencing, right? And I mean, even myself, if I were to look back and see all of the ups and downs and all of the things that
Mhm.
didn't go the right way, or but now that is part of my story, and it will resonate, right, with somebody, and it will help somebody
Right,
in,
right.
in that season. And so it's easier to look back now and see those things, because in
Mhm.
the moment, right, we don't see how that's going to
Yeah, how
ever
could this
be a
possibly be
positive.
good? Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Uh-huh.
Okay, I had a question here I wanted to do. Okay, because we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. So one of the gals here says, "How do you squash the internal voice that says you're not doing enough as a parent or an educator?"
You know, I think that again, perspective is everything. I've realized that self-condemnation is kind of a poison. It hinders you. It makes you depressed. It
Mhm.
makes you down. And for instance, I had a child with a lot of emotional, mental issues, and so on and so forth. And I used to say to my children, I said, if it's God's will for me to have him, it's God's will for you for me to have
Mhm.
him. And the difficulties that we have borne as a family during this particular season of life is if we respond to them well, then we will see fruit come out of it. And you're my champions with me. Our family is all for one and one for all. And regardless of what happens, and you know what? I've gotten lost. I forgot what you asked me.
That's okay. Just about how do you squash those internal voices?
Oh, I
Like,
think that,
because I could
yeah,
relate at the beginning when you were talking about you having, like, I'm not good enough and all of that.
uh,
I struggle with that too. And
yeah,
so, yeah, what does that look like, right? To kind of
uh,
be like, no, you're not going to run my day. This is
right.
not true,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, I've memorized a lot of verses about
Right.
God's love, that nothing can separate me from the love of God, neither death nor life, nor angels or principalities. This scripture tells us to take every thought captive. Um, I've realized that I am going to make mistakes and be vulnerable to pettiness until I die. I thought maybe when I'm 70, I won't sin anymore. And I'm 71 now, and I thought, well, no, maybe 80. But I think that it kind of denies God's ability to work in our lives when we focus on the failures or the negative things. I think I've just learned over years to say, um, the reason that God came was because he knew I needed him. He knew I wasn't perfect, but he loved me so much And that's how I'm going to love and just move forward.
Yeah.
And she might, I don't know if this person knows me better or not, but my children are amazingly um, well, they've gotten PhDs and gone to Oxford and Cambridge and in all these different places, and that was never my goal.
Right.
I was just trying to make it through a day,
Yeah.
and then one more dish and one more meal and one more attitude, and but I think that if I gave anything to my children, it was a vision for their lives. I say, you know what, you have a story to tell. I love who you are. God's going to use your weaknesses and your strengths. I'm so grateful I'm your mom. And I've had a lot of negative voices in my life
Yeah.
still. It continued throughout my whole life. But I thought, that's not who I am.
Mhm.
And I'm going to trust God that He's going to take my fish and loaves. That's fish and loaves were not enough to feed
Yeah.
5,000, but He took them and made them enough.
Yeah.
And so there was a point at which I had to say, I'm going to give my whole heart and I'm going to do this as best I can. But God never said that I needed to be perfect.
Right.
And so I look at my children now and I think they became so much more than in the sense of they're my best friends and they still
Mhm.
leave dirty cups in the
Yeah.
living room when we drink tea. I mean, they're not perfect, but I love their souls. I love their personalities. I love that we are close to one another.
Right.
Not perfect, but close. And so just don't allow the
Mhm.
poison of self-condemnation to be a habit. Whatever you water
Yeah.
grows.
Yes, that's so true, right? And I have to catch myself often where my mind is speaking things that aren't necessarily true about me, and I have to purposely intervene and write out the opposite of what that is,
Exactly.
because
Journaling is great.
that
Yeah.
is not the truth. So, all right, one more that I would love to chat about from somebody that's on live here. I think it's Lee says, okay, can you talk about how to love your prodigal who is, it appears, throwing away his birthright for a bowl of porridge? I
Yeah.
kind of think I know what you're going to say because I feel like you kind of touched on this at the beginning a little bit, but I would love to hear. What would you say to her?
Well, for one thing, there are many prodigals in Scripture.
Mhm.
God is not surprised by prodigals. God had prodigals. And you have to know that when he told the story of the prodigal son, he was talking to the Pharisees, the self-righteous, perfect sort of people. And and I think the reason that God told that story is because he has compassion on us as we experience children who are rebelling in our lives. And one of the pictures I love from the story is that the father was standing on the road often every day looking for the return of his son. And I think it's important for all parents to know that I cannot make my
Right.
children become a certain way. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no way. We all have the ability to decide. I always said that to my children when I was disciplining them. I can't make you respond to me right now, but if you do respond to me, there will be a reward in your heart and your attitude, and you will be able to experience blessing. But choose for yourselves what you're gonna, what decision you're gonna make at this point. And we can't ever control anyone.
Mm-mm.
A lot of times, before we ever got to someone, they had a personality or a negative issue in their lives. But I would say don't condemn yourself. Love unconditionally, all the things I said earlier. Send notes, send, I'm so happy when you come home.
Yeah.
Um, and believe forward in your children's
Mm.
lives. I do think that all children long for the approval of their parents. It's just built into us.
Yeah.
And so when we can be gracious and when we can be as God was to us, he looked out on the Israelites and he said, how I have longed to gather you, and yet you would not. And so Jesus also longed for us to respond to his love. So he definitely
Yeah.
understands.
Mm. That's so good. I love that. Believe forward. That's good.
Mm.
I love that. Yeah. I think, it is challenging because I think I have been fortunate because I'm not in that situation currently, so that is a huge blessing, but that doesn't mean that any day something
Exactly.
could happen and it's totally flipped. But I will say the encouragement that you are giving is so key, even just in my own life through difficult seasons with my children, loving them where they're at. It doesn't necessarily mean if there is situations going in, in their life that is against what you believe, that you are going to be all supportive of that, but you can still love your
Right.
child and have certain boundaries, right? But letting them know, just like you said, sending them notes. I love when you come home. All of these
Hmm.
things. So it's so powerful and it really does add up. It's just kind of like those little blocks, and it fills up their heart, because what the world wants people to think is that if you make a choice that doesn't agree with me,
Hmm.
then I don't want anything to do with you, right? But that's not who Christ was. That's not who
No.
we are sent to model, right? In our life, especially, as parents and the mom, right?
Right.
So,
Well, I have to say one more thing. And you probably are here too. I don't know if you are or not, but I've lived through a lot of
yeah,
seasons. There were seasons when my children were, where is their
yeah,
brain? What I mean is, I don't know how old this person is that this woman is
yeah,
talking about, but even as you mature, your
mhm,
children also mature.
yeah,
And if you've, so I feel like as I look back on my 40, 38, 36, and then 29-year-old, they've gone through seasons of pushing against the boundaries and wondering about these irrational Christians and,
yeah,
having doubts in their faith. And I would say, you know what, I'm going to believe for you because I know you have a good heart. And I said, sometimes the people who are most profound theologically are those who have asked questions because they
mhm,
wanted to know a bigger
right,
picture of God.
yeah,
And so I love you, I believe for, but don't be discouraged because of the season your child is in, because God is in the process of redeeming.
yes,
And also, my children have all, thank goodness, matured through a lot of these kinds of seasons. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yes,
It might change. Just
yes.
have hope and pray.
Right, right. That's right. Yes. Prayer and loving them where they're at is so good. Yes. So, all right. Well, this was so fun. Oh my gosh. And before you guys leave, I want to tell you, put this book on
Oh,
your Christmas list. Really, it will bless you. It is the most lovely. It is full of gorgeous pictures, words, quotes. It's just wonderful to pick that up and just kind of scroll through it, especially if I'm having thoughts in my head that maybe aren't in agreement with what I know to be true. All I just do is pick it up,
mm.
have my cup of coffee. If I was going to be more Sally, I would have a cup of
Oh,
tea,
I
but
believe in both.
yeah.
I'm an
So
equal caffeine person.
there you go. So, what a delight. I really appreciate you coming and just sharing your wisdom with
Mm.
not only, Instagram in general, but my audience, because you are a true blessing. And I consider you a mentor now that I have in later life. And yeah, and I just have had a wonderful time. So, thank you
You're
so
so
much.
sweet. It is such a delight to be with you. I do wish we lived next door,
I
but
do too. I
this
know
is
we would be out there getting our steps in together. I would love it.
this has
So,
been
yeah.
such a delight. Thank you for having me
Yes.
again.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry
All
Christmas
righty.
to you. Bye
Bye bye.
bye.